pool for like hours, he'll still beat me. So just telling the crowd how much I beat you in pool. Can you hear me? Right? You're muted. See him laughing because he knows it's true. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Muted. Stop. You just muted him, Sister Zainab.
No, he's still.
You're muted, Brother Mahmoud.
Ask to unmute. He needs to do what I'm trying to do.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Don't make any comments about pool. Whatever you have to say, let your ego go.
Hey, we were taught to be honest in Islam.
How's it going, brother?
Alhamdulillah, I won't complain. Always a pleasure to see you and everyone out there. Yeah, mashallah.
I was telling them about some of the blessing having you at the Florida camp. How when Hajj Hassanin couldn't come, you really filled that void. And now Brother Ali Saidi is here, the Quran reciter. He's helping you fill that void. Allah is the best defender. So again, I want to thank you for coming to that retreat. The camp.
No, I can't thank you enough for involving me.
So we know we have a book coming out soon. We're talking about that. We're really excited because Brother Mahmoud was, Colin Kaepernick was an NFL player who kneeled anthem. Well, he also did it in the NBA. And they blacklisted him. Unbelievable player. They just removed him from the NBA. So he's been through a lot of trials and tribulations. But this discussion, Brother Mahmoud, we've been talking a lot about the divine. And what a pivotal role it is that when you do have the dream of making the NBA, or whatever you put your attention, how much an influence and how much the presence of Allah you needed to get to that goal. So especially if you could talk and just give that story of how much God has played a role in your life from an early age.
Alhamdulillah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah's everything, man. For me, I learned very early, and I speak about this a lot, and I'm indebted to my grandmother, my uncle, and my aunt. We call her Lo. Her name is Dolores Cleveland. They, more than anyone, instilled in me early on, before I was even a Muslim, just the importance of prayer. And not just praying for yourself, but praying for others in a sense more than yourself, and at the same time, moving in the direction of your prayer. And it wasn't until years later, many years later, when I came across this quote that said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. And of course, what Allah says, that he won't change the condition of people until you change what is in yourself. Well, for me,
Mahmoud,
yeah.
Can you repeat that line? Fine. When you want to repeat that line, please. Find the first one.
The saying that if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others.
Brothers and sisters, did you hear that? Sometimes you think you need to find yourself by buying something for yourself, right, or getting something for yourself, or doing something for yourself. But sometimes the only way to find yourself is when you're in service for others for the sake of Allah.
Yeah, mashallah. And actually, when I started, and it was only by the grace and mercy of Allah, only, I began to, many years later, analyze, what contributed by Allah to my success, right? And I realized that mostly everything I thought about, the reasons why I wanted to be successful, had little to do with me personally. I would think about people that were suffering. I was that child at 12 o'clock midnight. I would constantly find myself looking at images of, these infomercials or what have you, showing, give to these causes and all of these, children with protruding bellies and sunken in eyes. And I would find myself crying profusely. I would think about my mother. I would think about my brothers, getting them out the ghetto. I would think about helping people. And these are the things that more so than anything woke me up in the morning. To get me up when I didn't feel like getting up. Yeah, you wanted individually to be successful. You wanted to have things, but mostly all of my thoughts had dealt with something outside of myself. And so I was constantly praying And I'm not just talking about being on your knees type of praying. I'm talking about walking the street. I was trying to be as conscious as I can. Even I had this routine when I would pass by a church, I would cut off the music, right? Out of respect. And I would just find myself, man, talking to God, talking to Allah throughout the day, certain points of the time, constantly reinforcing the things I wanted to become. I would pull away at certain parts of the day, and I would close the curtains to the window, and I would just sit there, and I would mental imagery, and I would envision my future. I mean, to the detail, how I wanted crowds to look, how I wanted success to look, how I wanted to take care of my mother, how I wanted to play, even from all the way down to the moves that I was making. And then I would go out. I would wake up in the morning, 4 o'clock, be at the courts at 5, and I would train. I would take photo images in my head of those things I wanted to become, and those moves I wanted to make, and I would train and train and train, and I would push myself to like near death. And I'm not exaggerating. And this was like something that I did consistently, day in and day out, and trying to also associate myself around the right types of people. So it's like all of that combined, the prayers, the mental imagery, the moving towards what you're praying for, the circle of friends that you're associated with. I mean, all of those things, are the things that I did growing up.
You notice, not only did you pray, but you worked for it. A lot of people, even Victoria was speaking about this earlier, how this whole law of attraction, they think if they just think it, that it's going to come to them. But God has a system, no, you need to go towards that. But when you said, I did this mental imagery, and you closed your eyes, it's because you felt abundant. You felt that love. You didn't need those things in order to get it. And I think that's the secret. And when you were imagining filling up those arenas, or scoring 30 points per game, you felt it as if the body, it was real. Because I know there was one time where you shared a story where you wanted to take care of your mom so bad, you woke up, you felt like you were a millionaire, you had nothing. You didn't even have food for milk, you didn't even be able to buy milk. And you would open up your hands and you would be surprised after your vision that there wasn't $1 million in his hand. He was surprised about it. That's how real it was to him. Mm-hmm. What advice can you give to us, especially to me, to stay on that track where you keep so in tune with what Allah wants? That how did you have that to the point where you just knew, because nobody taught you to do that. You just knew.
I mean, I don't know if I'm qualified to give advice, but I would just say for me, if in terms of what I did and what I still try to do to this day, I'm always trying to be conscientious. I mean, of course we're not perfect, but I'm always trying to keep Allah front and center in everything that I do. I'm always trying to, think about ways, how can I, there's a saying, and I mentioned this a lot too. I think George Washington Carver, he said, no one has the right to come into this world and go out of it without leaving behind distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through it. And, we know in Islam, Prophet Islam teaches us, or it's said that, that who's the best individual, the one you benefit from the most. So, in terms of how can I be of benefit and utilize everything that Allah has given me to the fullest, for me, that's my greatest fear, is that, not death or anything of that nature, that Allah, you've given us so much, and we take so much for granted. And I'm often asked, well, what would you, if you could ask for one thing, what would it be? Right? And I said, man, if I can die, if I can leave this world, and figuratively speaking, I'm in front of Allah, and Allah asks me, Mahmoud, what do you have for me? Mm-hmm. If I could just be at that level where I could say, I have nothing left. I've used everything you've given me. Wow. So for me, it's just constantly being consistent and not getting, we all going to make mistakes, but just staying focused, staying present, constantly being consistent, constantly having these conversations. I'm constantly talking to myself when I mess up, when I do good, not to get too excited or, allow it to make me complacent. Look, man, you can do better. That was the way I was even when I was younger, never to get complacent and not to be too down on yourself. When things don't go the way you want it, all of these are moments to build, but keeping Allah front and center and just constantly moving, because I believe that the more you do that, Allah will show you the way and you'll become stronger and wiser as a result of that.
So we know you even envision how many points you're going to score per game at 28 in college. Can you talk about that experience, how you envision you're going to score this amount of points in high school, and that manifested itself because you're saying you had a bigger goal of being of service to your mom to repay her for what she's done for you. And that was the reason what drove you. Because if money drove you, you would have never been able to manifest that. It would have been impossible.
Right.
Then you get into college and you're able to do the same thing. Then you're in the NBA where the guys are a lot bigger. And you're thinking probably your moves are not going to work. And those negative thoughts where you're facing Michael Jordan, you're facing John Stockton, you're facing the best players in the world. How did you keep that mindset? Because, see, we have levels. When I meet people, let's say entrepreneurs, they get stuck at a level because they think it's bigger than them. And then they fall under that weight. How did you keep it going to that level?
Well, I can't not mention Allah in the equation. And I know sometimes people get here, okay, you keep saying Allah. Allah, man, Allah. At the same time, we all have things that makes us tick. And every person has to find out what that is for themselves. And for me, I was always, it's like there was these motivators that I'll keep in my pocket or keep in the pocket of my mind. And some days one of them stands out more than the other. It could be, look, I'm thinking about my mom, right? And that's the thing that keeps me focused. Some days that thought isn't strong enough, so I have to pull from an opponent. I have to pull that. Sometimes that one isn't. I have to pull from helping people. I used to take on the road with me in the NBA, and I was going to bring that up also, what you said about junior high school and college. But I used to take on the road with me these videos, and one was The Message, one was Lion of the Desert, one was the Battle of Algiers, and one was this VHS that had like real coverage of the war in Chechnya, right? And certain days when I would travel, certain games, I would put that video in and I would just look at it. And I would imagine that the arena that I'm playing in, the teams that I'm playing against are those people who are causing the oppression. And in order for me to get justice, I had to annihilate them. Right? So I'm always creating these things in my head that's gonna motivate me and influence me. And as you said earlier about high school and college, almost every man, it's amazing. Even now that I'm much older and I'm through playing in the context of professional getting paid for it, I look back and I look at these guys now. And it's amazing how it reminds me, I think, of the Battle of Badr, right? When they I think Allah, there's a verse, he said they saw the enemy, right? They saw them as huge, like many, right? And sometimes when you see things like that, it's discouraging. And it's amazing when you put that focus in your head and you become determined, you put Allah first and you moving. You don't see 6'7" and 6'8" and 7 feet. You see, man, I'm trying to destroy you. I'm not thinking about the details of you're strong, you're long, you're big. I'm thinking, man, it's me or you. And now that I'm older, I'm like, man, how in the world? We know it's Allah, but if I would have thought about that stuff, those would have been things that you know what I mean, that would mess up the program, so to speak. So I go through high school, literally the points, and I would envision this stuff. What I averaged my junior and senior year literally was like almost, when I say if not identical, it was so close. I don't know math, what's the closest, but it was so close to my numbers in high school. I averaged like 30 whatever in my junior year, and like 28 something in my senior year. In LSU, I averaged 30.2 in my freshman year and 20 something in my sophomore year. Some of the same things that were happening to me that I envisioned by signing autographs and crowds jumping on me was happening in high school. The same in junior high, same in college. They had, literally had to pull a security guard to pull me out of gyms, and they had security guards on the road at LSU to prevent people from coming to the hotel. I can't make this stuff up, but just thinking about that every day, praying to God I'm praying for the right reasons. I'm hoping that Allah, yes, we want to be this, but like the verse in the Quran says, there are those who ask Allah for the best. Please give us the best in this life. And only, but they will have no share in Jannah. But there are those who pray, oh Allah, give me the best in life so I can increase my blessings. And so that was me, like, give me this so that I can use it in the best of ways. And I'm telling you, it's amazing how pieces just start adding up. And it's just being consistent, being present, being grateful. No matter what comes, just having this sense of gratitude. It's so much to say about it, but
Mahmoud, I want everybody to have paid attention. Did you feel his energy?
Yeah.
Isn't he excited about life?
Yeah.
Isn't he talking as if he did it yesterday? Do you know why he's talking that way? Because he's doing the same thing now towards other things. Right? Do you speak that way about your dreams and visions and passions and purposes? With that type of vigor, excitement? If not, take the lesson from Brother Mahmoud and say, wake up, pumped, excited. That's what made him get out of the ghetto. That's what made him buy his mom a brand new house, buy a Ferrari. That's what's not making him now go to Africa and help the poor. Just be of service to others completely. Because he's never lost it. He didn't allow somebody to take it away. What did Victoria teach today? Don't be a victim. What did many of them do in their yoga sessions? Let go, surrender. Yes or no? So if anything you can take from Mahmoud, more than his words, it's his energy. And when I first saw him, because I've met other NBA players that have come to the camp and other professionals, I would see their arrogance. There's that, and I said, nope, not here. This ain't the spot. Right when I met Mahmoud, I said, whoa, that's different. You want to know what's really weird? When I was a kid, I watched a show called Inside Stuff. And he had a clip where he was being shown up, and he has Tourette syndrome. Doesn't take medication. Imagine making the NBA with Tourette syndrome. I deal with youth that have Tourette's. Damn. So when he had to tie his shoes like 50 times, and if it didn't feel right, he would retie it. He would shoot a basketball. If it didn't go swishing 10 times in a row, he would redo it. So he became who he became. So actually, he says his Tourette's helped him. But I remember when I was a kid, I watched that. I swear to you, I said, one day I'm going to meet that guy. And then coincidentally, we own the camp. And who walks in? We didn't tell him to come to the camp. Somebody who knew us brought him. And when he came in, your Tourette's was kicking in. Whoa, what's a place that looks like this? And when I saw him, I said, wow, look how Allah brought him to me. We've been brothers ever since. And he's good at basketball, but pool and tennis and golf and need some work. Mahmoud, humble. All right. But see that energy? That's why so many people love being around them. That's why the youth. And I'll never forget, Ali, your younger brother. Me and Mahmoud will play for hours against all the cameras. We'll keep playing, we'll keep playing. And we played, it was hot that day. I'm probably talking 8 years ago, Mahmoud.
Yeah.
It was hot that day. And we played, and I was exhausted. And when I took a shower, it was about an hour later. And there was this, Ali's younger, you know what, it was your cousin, I think. It wasn't your brother, it was somebody else. He was there waiting, he was the smallest kid on the court, never got to play. And he was just waiting for Mahmoud to teach him. He waited and waited. And I went to take a shower, this is after we played, and Mahmoud is playing with him as if he didn't play all day. And he's giving him his full attention. That's love. But the only way you're able to do that is if you love yourself the way Mahmoud does, for the sake of Allah. Meaning, he loves himself enough to try not to sin. He'll tell you, I'm a sinner, I make mistakes, but I'm learning from it. That's what I love. I love meeting people who are genuine. Tori, didn't you say that? You just hate taking advice from people who are not genuine. It's just not gonna work. It will not reach your hearts. Brother Mahmoud would say, Islamically, maybe I don't have the best knowledge, but the knowledge I do have, I'm willing to share. And you know it's from his heart. Right? So do we appreciate that? Does it feel good when we saw that right now, what you just watched? But how about if we were watching you speak that way about your passions? How would you feel? If we were watching yourself, how would you feel if we were watching you? You feel 10 times good. So create those opportunities in life and don't just admire it, be it. That's why he's joining. How cool would it be to spend a week-long retreat with them in the summer? Yes or no? Yeah. You hear that, Mahmoud? So I got you for a week.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, look, I love it. So, babe, hey, don't threaten me with a good time.
Any questions? I don't want to take up too much of his time, but any questions? Now Mahmoud is training NBA players. He played for the Big Three. I don't know if he might play for another year. And he's got a book coming out. You know, his life story. He's got some we need to support him. As soon as that book comes out, I want everybody to purchase it. And it's done through the Colin Kaepernick Foundation, correct?
Yeah, Kaepernick Publishing.
Yes. Any questions you guys would like to ask? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you very much for giving us your energy.
Thank you.
So, is loss an option for you? Loss of materialistic things, loss of human loved ones, loss of a friend, loss of time.
So she may be asking that because maybe she knows people that are suffering through loss, and she wants to know, how do you deal with it? Because you have such great energy, and you must have had loss in your life. How do you keep that energy knowing that you've had loss? Like you've lost your mom and things like that.
Alhamdulillah. I mean, for me, simple. I'm always trying to process just, as much as humanly possible, everything around me. And there's always, every day there's a sense of loss with something, right? And just the concept of death itself. I was even elementary school, right? I would think, and I didn't know until I became a Muslim that to think about death, not necessarily in a morbid type of way, right? But, there are benefits in contemplating death. There's a saying that you think, contemplate death, it brings you closer to Allah. So I'm constantly, every single day thinking about things like that, not in a way that is going to paralyze me, but in a way to keep me focused, to know that, hey, this is transient, it's temporary, right? I have to utilize my time. And all of these things also, I'm always registering all of these things with two things that they're building blocks. These things, Allah said, He doesn't give you a burden that you can't bear, right? This is just a part of life and death. And so I've learned to embrace that these things are going to happen. And all of these things that happen, like wherever Allah, and this is me, wherever Allah mentions, from my understanding, wherever Allah mentions a challenge or struggle, he always reinforces it with like 2, 3 things or more, right? Most surely, you know, will I try you through this, but give good news to those who are patient in adversity.
Yes.
Allah will give you a struggle that you can't bear, right? All throughout the, so me, when I go through stuff like that, I'm constantly thinking about, okay, this happened, but what good can come from it? What are you trying to teach me, Allah, to help me grow? Because I know you didn't give this to me to break my back. You gave this to me to teach me something, to elevate me. And so this is my, this is, and sometimes people from the outside, they may look at that and it seems like you're cold and hard, right? Like, why aren't you crying and throwing stuff? And because your mom or this person passed away, right? And we all process things differently. It reminds me of the story of a guy who was walking his son to the burial site and he was smiling. He said, "What are you smiling for?" They were mad at him. He says, "He was never mine to begin with. Allah gave him to me as a loan. I'm grateful for that, mashallah." And he goes on to tell his story. So this is how me, Mahmoud, this is how I process those moments, whether it's a human loss, you know, immediate family, someone else. And also what I do is I try never to, we live in a society where it's all around us, like crime and violence and death. And so many people become desensitized to it. I was talking to someone the other day, and this may apply, it may not apply. And he said, "Well, I've been desensitized." I said, "I pray to never become desensitized," right? I pray to always, when I hear somebody has been murdered or killed, right, for that to be something that triggers something deep inside of me to become better. You know, because once you become desensitized to something like that, you know, you're on your way out. And I'm just thankful to Allah that even when I hear people, I don't care if I don't know you, if you kill an animal, right, you're just killing it for sport, it pisses me off, right? You know, because all of these, Allah says, you know, those who take a life unjustly is as though you've killed all of humanity. And so this is how my mind works to a degree with all of that stuff. And it keeps, it's kept me grounded. It's kept me from being desensitized. It's kept me, again, not being perfect, none of us are, but it's kept me constantly calling on Allah, "Please forgive me. Please don't let me leave this earth on a bed of kufr. You know, allow my good deeds to be much greater than my bad deeds." And I remember something Hassanain said, or either it was you, Hussein, you know, why do we conform to Allah? Why do we worship you? Some say, "Oh, because because he's worthy of it." Allow me to do it because I know, just because you're worthy of it. You know, so I hope I answered your question, but this is my thought pattern.
It's like, imagine if I tell you, Mahmoud, I'm only your friend because you give me money, or you let me drive a Ferrari, or because you're an NBA player. You'd be very insulted.
Yes.
You have that relationship with God. You know, God, I worship you because I need something, because I'm going through pain.
Right.
And God says, that's it. That's how you worship me. It's like going to our mom and saying, "Mom, I only love you because you feed me."
Right.
Right? And unfortunately, that's where we're at with our Tawheed, with our relationship with God. And it's much deeper than that. Mahmoud, I want to thank you. I want you to end with one story where when you did do the work, you worked really hard up until you were either a junior or a senior. You were from 3rd grade grinding. Before going to school, we know if it was raining, it was hot, you would go and do the work. But then Allah showed you something. And that's what I want to tell everybody. Do the work. And then Allah will give you a moment where you realize, oh my God, it's working. Can you talk about that moment when you got invited as a junior, when Michael Jordan was in his prime Michael Jordan, 80s flying dunk Michael Jordan.
Right.
And he invited you to a camp. Go ahead. You share that.
Yeah, I was in high school, and he didn't, but it was the Nike camp. It was 110, I believe, at the time, of the top high school basketball players in the nation. And every year they would have some pros to come in and talk to us. And this particular year, because I went 2 years in a row, and this particular year, Michael Jordan was there. And I was on the bottom bleachers, and I was like close enough to, if I reached out my hand, I would have been able to touch it. And I mean, he was like, man, this man's body was so chiseled, right? And you're talking about 6'6", and I'm what, 5'11", you know.
Right.
And out of all the people there, he looks at me and he asked me to come onto the basketball court. He hands me the basketball. He says, young fella, I want you to come at me with everything you have, and I'm going to try to stop it. I said, okay. Now, I've been envisioning these moments. I've been playing against 2 and 3 invisible people, and from elementary on up. They grabbing me and hitting the ball and everything. And I'm playing against older guys. So I'm like, I'm embracing the moment. Of course, I was a little nervous, but I wasn't scared, because you want to do your best. And I remember getting the ball, and I gave him the quick jab step to the right. He bit for it. I took off left, and I ran through the hoop because he was chasing. I mean, he was running. I can hear his muscles moving, and I flipped the ball up, and it went in. The crowd went crazy. Then I'm thinking it's over. I go back, and he gives me the ball again. This time, I knew I was like, I'm not going to do the same thing, but I'm going to make it look like where I'm positioning my body, I'm going to do the same thing. And this time I went through my legs, and I leaned left. He bit. I crossed him over. I took off right, laid him up. It came out of the goal. I mean, it came out of the hoop. He asked me for the ball back. Then he told me to go sit down. And that, I mean, for me, that's the moment, even more so than anything. Like, that was the pivotal moment that, okay, I knew I was on to something. But when I did that, and I said to myself, I sat down, and I remember like yesterday, I didn't say this out loud, but I said, oh my goodness, I just scored on Michael Jordan twice. And I said, this is the thing. I said, it was easy. I said, man, wait till I go home and tell my friends about this. They ain't gonna believe it. But that's the moment I knew whatever I was doing, not only do I have to keep it up, I have to pick it up. Because I didn't want to ever lose that feeling. Yeah.
I want to thank you, Haj Mahmoud. Inshallah,
Thank you.
To see you in person, and thank you for being an inspiration to me and so many others. And we're so excited to continue doing our work together. Inshallah.
No, thank you, man. I love all of you, man, and nothing but the best. Anytime.
Anytime. Let's give him a largest of salawats. We'll catch up soon, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.